Teachers across the United States, out of concern for their students and determined to get them extra help so they don't fall behind, will seek special ed service programs. While these children will likely benefit from receiving special education services, it may not be the most appropriate option for them. By initiating the special education referral process prematurely, teachers are adding to disproportionality in special ed. According to the National Education Association, they view disproportionality as an important issue in addressing at the local and state regarding closing the achievement gap in students. Disproportionate representation of diverse students in special education program has been a national concern for nearly 4 decades. Disproportionate representation of minority students is among the most critical and enduring problem in the field of special education. So what does disproportionality of special education really mean? Disproportionality exists when a group is in a special education at a higher rate than the population average. It also means that there is an overrepresentation of minorities in other categories. Disproportionality is defined as the overrepresentation or underrepresentation of a particular population or group in special or gifted education programs compared to the group in an overall population. Approximately 13.5% of all students in K-12 schools receive special education services, according to the U.S. Department of Education in 2006. Some subgroups of children receive special education. Some subgroups of children receive special education services at rates that are significantly higher or lower than 13.5%. Disproportionality exists in various forms. For example, overrepresentation can be presented at the national, state, and district level by over-identifying of students as disabled or under-identification as gifted and/or talented. They can have higher rates for certain populations in special education categories such as emotionally disturbance and learning disability. When identifying students for special education services, teacher referral is one of the strongest predictions. When identifying students for special education services, teacher referral is a strong predictor of eligibility for special education. According to studies that I've read, numerous studies have shown that 73 to 90% of students referred by classroom teachers for special education due to academic problems are found eligible for services, as well as multiple research studies have also demonstrated that a child's race, ethnicity are significantly related to the probability that he or she will be inappropriately identified as disabled. According to the National Research Council in 2002, Native American children are more likely to receive special education services than the general population. On the other hand, Asian students are also overrepresented in gifted and talented programs. Typically, disproportional representation is viewed exclusively as overrepresentation of certain groups, but underrepresented in others. For example, certain populations are underrepresented in programs for the gifted and talented, and other groups are considered underrepresented because of proportion of students from certain ethnic or racial groups. So why is disproportionality a concern? Labeling students as disabled when they really are not leads to unwanted services and supports. Misidentified students are likely to encounter limited access to the rigorous curriculum and diminished expectations. And more importantly, mislabeling students creates a false impression of a child's intelligence and academic potential. Once students are receiving special education services, they tend to remain in special education classes. They are likely to encounter a limited, less rigorous curriculum, have lower expectations which lead to diminished academic and post-secondary opportunities. Students in special education programs have less access to academics. Disabled students are often stigmatized socially, and disproportionality can contribute to significant racial separations. According to the U.S. Department of Education 2006, across all ethnic and racial groups, twice as many males as females are identified as needing special education services in primary schools. Nearly 75% of students with specific learning disabilities are males. 76% of students receive special education services under the category of emotionally disturbed are males, and more than 50% of students receiving speech-language services are males. Factors that can contribute to disproportionate representation in special education services are school-related factors, such as ineffective academic curriculum and behavioral support, inadequate instructional and classroom management, poor support and referral systems for students who are at risk, and insufficient support for teachers working with culturally diverse groups. Besides school factors, there's also other factors outside the school system, such as poverty, English language proficiencies, ethnic and racial factors that contribute to referrals, testing, and incorrect placement of children from racial and ethnic minorities. Despite improved outcomes for students with disabilities in the United States, students with mental, emotional disturbance are more likely to be male, Black, and live in poverty compared to those in the general population. For the past decade, many concerns have been expressed regarding the disproportionality of students placed in special education, particularly those that are identified as EBD. Students of color are disproportionately placed in more restrictive settings than their white peers, and fewer Black students with EBD labels receive counseling when compared to those students who are white. Students with an EBD label continue to be cited as the least accepted and the most negatively stereotyped of all special ed categories. While standards-based reform movements such as No Child Left Behind in the United States call for the education of all and the high accountability, it places pressure on teachers who have an underperforming, troublesome student removed from the regular classroom, so that the teacher will not be held accountable and responsible for that child's academic progress. Special education has been restructured and transformed by the legislation in the last few years. Due to landmark victories in court cases such as Brown versus Board of Education, Pennsylvania Association for Retarded Children versus the Commonwealth of Pennsylvania, parents and student advocates began to lobby Congress for federal laws and money that would ensure students with disabilities got an education that would meet their needs. Therefore, the Education of All Handicapped Children Act of 1974 was put into law. This law provided safeguards for children with disabilities and their parents. It also outlined the entire foundation upon which current special education practices are founded upon. Then, in 1990, the Education for All Handicapped Children Act was reauthorized and was labeled, or was called, IDEA, the Individuals with Disability Education Act. This act upheld previous laws. However, it changed some verbiage from children to individuals and handicapped to with disability. Then, in 2005, IDEA was reauthorized once again. It became, or referred to as IDEA, except now we call it IDEA 2004, Individuals with Disability Education Improvement Act. The focus of IDEA 2004 was to increase the academic achievement of students in special education. Focuses on writing measurable goals and actually measuring them by progress monitoring. It also wanted to increase accountability for results and to streamline the special education process. In between IDEA 1997 and IDEA 2004, No Child Left Behind Act was signed into law in 2002. No Child Left Behind Act is based on 4 principles: stronger accountability for results, increased flexibility and local control, expanded options for parents while focusing on what works. No Child Left Behind Act requires accountability for all children, including student-based groups on poverty, race and ethnicity, disability, and limited English language proficiency. It was also intended to help close the achievement gap between disadvantaged, disabled, and minority students and their peers. Most importantly, No Child Left Behind can help address disproportionate representation of students from diverse backgrounds in special education. All stakeholders, classroom teachers, support staff, parents, community leaders, school and district decision makers, both at the state and federal level, play an important role in decreasing disproportionality and improving educational outcomes for students. By working together, we can all make a difference. We can inform all educational stakeholders about representation patterns and get the states and local districts' commitment to improve representation. We can move students from more restrictive to less restrictive settings as soon as possible. We can also implement the No Child Left Behind principles, such as small group tutoring, small group setting, in which individuals are progress monitored to see if the interventions are truly being effective. Special education placement, more intense services are brought to the student with a goal in mind, as well as implementing a school-wide positive discipline behavior plan. Teachers can be instructed on how to use effective classroom organization and management and implement targeted interventions. We also can look at the early interventions, such as providing services that are promoting parenting, health, and emotional development, having quality preschool programs that develop critical cognitive and behavioral skills, and screen children early and provide tier interventions in both reading and in behavior. We can also ensure that teachers have high qualifications, such as, are they effective intervention strategies? Do they have strong classroom management and behavior skills? And provide, as well as by providing support to work with students whose behavior is challenging for the teacher. But most importantly, we must move away from looking at the internal child characteristics and IQ test, but focus on the improvement of students' competencies through research-based interventions.